What's that you're doing?
I'm looking at a bit of poetry I wrote.
A poet?
Aye.
A poet sitting beside me. I didn't know you were a poet, Cousin Pat.
Do you think you're the only person in the family that writes poetry?
Well, what's the poem about? Poet.
It's about a lassie I met from Drumquin.
Uh-huh. And what was her... Did she have a name?
No, she had lovely blonde hair. And I'll tell you, it was the hair I fell in love with.
Well, let's hear this poem.
I met her at a fair day in Drumquin. I fancied her lovely blonde hair. Told her of my farm and the wee bit of land and promised I'd give her her share. But she said she was courting a fella about the half age of myself. I told her about me big dresser and my granny had left me her delf. 17 acres of mountain, 2 heifers, a goat and a dog, 14 steps from the back of the house to the big turf bank in the bog. I tried to coax and persuade her to drop the young lad that she had, but she didn't say aye and she didn't say no, but she said she would chat to her dad. Well, we parleyed, she agreed she would meet me at a fair day in Newton instead. For the next 3 weeks, my head was astray, wondering what her father had said. But he liked the sound of the acres, the heifers, the goat and the dog. He told her to drop the young fella. A man with money can do the same job. Well, the neighbours heard of me romancing. Some thought I was over the hill. The one thing they said is for certain, she'll not have to go on. Well, the others had thought I was crazy. Get that notion out of your head. But the notion I kept to myself was to get the young blonde head to bed. 9 months from the day we were married, a smile on the face of her da. We were back at the fair day in Drumquin, me and herself and a ba. The years that went by and the bad grew up to a big strong lump of a cub who doesn't resemble his father and spends all his days in the pub. So what do you think of that poetry?
That taught you a lesson. Well, you think you can write poems. Well, you see, I'm a romantic at heart, Cousin Pat. You're going round the fair and Gorchin, and where am I going? Oh, I'm going down the lakes in County Fermanagh. County Fermanagh, you know, is my spiritual home.
Oh.
I weep when I think of Fermanagh. I blend in well with the lakes then, you see. Plenty of water. But anyway, I'm going to tell you a poem that I wrote. And it's a very romantic poem. It's about the worst day in your life. And you know what day that is for a poor creature like yourself? Valentine's Day.
Uh-huh.
You're sitting there and the postman is driving past and you're looking through the window, and does he stop and bring you a card? No. I'm going to tell you, to my Fermanagh Valentine. It's a sad poem, Cousin Pat. It'll bring tears to your glazed eyes.
Will it look a bit of hanky?
A whole box. And I'm going to try it in that most ludicrous of all the Lord's inventions, Patrick, the Fermanagh accent. I break into song towards the end of it, an old-time song from the distant days gone by. You might remember dancing at a ceilí to it.
Oh, be good, I do.
To my Fermanagh Valentine. Shall I compare you to a rose? Ah, no. I suppose to me you're more like an old yellow whin that's broad at the top with its bottom caved in. You put me in mind of me bicycle light. Your face is all cracked and your battery's wore out. You're a wonder of nature And you once made me swoon when one night, passing me window, you eclipsed the moon. Actually, my heart leaps up when I behold you kneeling in the pew, your coat straining at the shoulders. Maybe one day we two will wander down that aisle, and hand in hand we linger as your calluses abraze me wee lily white fingers. Ah, now, do you mind the time at the Blake Record Hop? You brought tears to me eyes when you tramped on me foot, and then you whirled me around as Dickie Rock crooned. At that moment of madness, it was over too soon. Ah, now, at night in me meadow, by the silvery moon, I still sing to the stars our wee Dickie Rock tune. How do you do what you do to me? I wished I knew. Ach, boys, oh boys, you're a holy Tara, but one day you might be mine, and then maybe I'll not be so lonely. Your Fermanagh Valentine.
Very good. Well, you know this much. I didn't think it was in you to write stuff like that.
Well, it's now out of me.
Very good. But just when I heard you on about the Fermanagh, do you remember the thing that was out many years ago called the renovation grants?
I do. Where there were fellows who had about 2 walls of a cottage and they were building mansions.
That's right.
You did that yourself?
I did do a bit of it all right. Well, there's a man beside us, and he got it kind of mixed up, and he used to call it the recreation grants. But you suppose he was in or round or about.
True enough, true enough. Ah, those were the days, Cousin Pat.
Oh, good. Well, a neighbour of mine, he got what they call the renovation grant. And he got a powerful good job done, and he was well happy with it. New roof, insulated, and the PVC wonders in, great job. So he was sitting, I think it was the month of November, and he was sitting back in front of the fire, as content as could be, about 4:30 in the evening. And this boy stopped, big black Mercedes, pulled onto the street. He looked out the window and he pulled back the wee lace curtain. God, he says, wonder who's this? So he stepped out and opened the door, and the man came over and he says, I see you got the house done. Aye, he says, I did. Oh, he says, it looks well. And he says, you got the PVC wonders in. Aye, he says, I did. What do you think of them? God, he says, the PVC wonders is a great job. Anybody in the country should not be living without PVC wonders. They're a mighty job. Well, your man had a briefcase under his arm, and he says to them, he says, if you think they're that great a job, he says, it's a wonder you didn't pay for them. He says, what? Pay for them? He says, do you see that doorstep you're standing on? The boy that sold me the PVC one, he stood on that very same doorstep, and he told me that they'd pay for themselves in 6 months.
But do you mind the time, Cousin Pat, before the days of PVC windows and double glazing and triple glazing, all kinds of glazing? Did you ever waken up on a winter's morning and you could see the frost inside the window and the glass?
Oh, I used to have the lovely pattern coming down over the window.
And then, did you ever sleep with the horsehair blanket?
Well, now, that might have been a bit before my time.
I don't remember it either. I just remember my grandfather talking about it.
Right.
And then do you remember the stone hot water bottle?
I do. But I'll tell you the one we had. We had a kind of a bottle, it's like a tin bottle, and you put the sock over it.
Mm-hmm.
And you put the sock up over it, and you put it in at the bottom of the bed, and I tell you it was a good job, so it was. But you see, just when you're chatting about that, there was a thing. You remember the thatch on the house? There was an awful handling beside us at home about the thatch. And I wrote this about it. Johnny says to Bridget, there's a lake above the bed. When I was sleeping sound last night, it fell upon your head. Should I tell you all about it a month ago or more? It didn't seem to matter then, but now you know the score. You may send for Mick the Thatcher to come to do his job. He was due to come last autumn, but you thought you'd save a bob. Now we have to send for him, and urgent is the call. And we'll have to get the bucket out and move the bed and all. And if the thatchery is busy, there'll be down rain on the floor, and a leak upon the rigging, and God knows how many more. But you wouldn't make a move, no matter what I said. Thank God for that little drop that fell upon your head.
Do you remember going into the old cottages? Do you remember? And you would come out and your skin was caked with turf smoke.
Oh, no.
Those were the days.
And you couldn't get the smell of smoke out of your clothes.
Well, so I noticed, Cousin Pat, so I noticed. You know, isn't it great about this part of the world? We have sayings and ways of speaking that they have nowhere else in the whole wide world. You know, County Tyrone, I would say, is the only place in the world where a dog can be wild tame.
Mm-hmm.
What we say is the way we say it.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine many years ago, and I said to him, what are you doing at Easter? And he looked at me, and he was a big, you knew the man, he was 6'3", and he stood up, and he looked at me like that, and he says, me and her's going to Paris. And you know what he was saying, Cousin Pat? He was saying, my wife and I are going to the capital city of France. Me and her. Mm-hmm. Me and her. Her. That's the way they speak in the townland of Lena. Do you know where Lena is?
I don't tell you the truth.
Right, well, if you get lost in Mountfield and you make your way to Gortin, you have just passed through Lena. Mm-hmm. And the townland of Lena is most unique. It's about maybe a half a dozen of fields that talk like that in Lena. They spit the words out like that. It is most peculiar. And they talk about her. And what my friend was doing was imitating the Lena accent. And I thought, Patrick, her. Ah, her. You talked about your blonde-haired friend, her. The most beautiful girl in the world. Her. You're living on your old-time farm. Her. Could be the cow in the field. Mm-hmm. Or her could be the granny. Or the mammy. Or the bicycle. Her. Me and her. And if you're very patient and still awake, I'll play me and her for you.
Go ahead.
Do the worst.
Do you feature a bit in that as well?
I play it. This is my weapon of mass destruction. Me and her. The night I catched her in Gortin, Her eyes were twinkling like stars. And I catch herself on, she told me. But we stepped out, me and her. Me and her got married in Mountful of a Monday in the middle of May, with a wedding breakfast in Carman, and we went to Armagh for the day. I had nothing to give her but hardship, and my father's farm to share. But she gave me 2 sons and a daughter, with a smile, the spit of her. Betimes, I never liked her, though I loved her in my own twisted way. Ach, many's the time her nyamming and her chittering drove me astray. But there was a time me and her laughed together, and we danced to an old fiddle tune. We lay snug together in our wee settled bed, and we threshed by the light of the moon. Her white hair is as soft as the daisies, and her skin's cracked like broken eggshell. Her beads are crocheted through her fingers, and there's nobody here but ourselves. For she's lying on a bolster of satin, and in her heart there's no longer a stir. And I howl, I'm afeard of the morrow, for that's the end of me and her.
Very good.
There you go. Oh, I'm an old romantic at heart, Cousin Pat.
Well, just as you were sitting there, you know these townlands, some of them's wild hard to pronounce. And
Right.
there's one out there, it's called Ceilí. And this is a true story. There was a man lived in Ceilí and he had 3 sons. And you know the way years ago the people would gather in the summertime to help them win the hay. Well, there was about another 4 more, and they had great help down winning the hay. And it was about 4 o'clock in the evening. It was a lovely, warm summer's evening. And the man that looked round the field and he thought, it's near time I got these men something to drink. For they'd worked away the whole day. They got a good dinner all right, but they were getting thirsty. And he looked round the field, and it was one of his sons now, a wee bit of kind of a useless kind of a boy, you know, and it wasn't much good in the field, but he thought he would send him to the town for a gallon of Guinness. So he said to him, he says, look, he says, wee Johnny, he says, will you go down to the dairy and you'll get a big gallon canister of Guinness, of a big jar, and says, head for the town for the full of that for these men. Now, the gully's not too far out of Drumquin, it's only about a mile and a half. And the son, good enough, he was glad to get away out of the field. He went down into the dairy and he lifted the canister and away went to the town. Well, if you know anything about Drumquin, there's a place called the Crooked Bridge. And he was going swinging along at the best that he could, and he came round, and the Lord, going by the Crooked Bridge, didn't he hit the canister and broke it into 1,000 pieces. But him kind of a trend that he was, he passed no remarks, and on he went to the town, and Tom Kane was there at the time in the pub. He walked into Tom and he says, I'm looking for a gallon of Guinness. And Tom says, that's good enough. He says, well, what do you want me to put it in? So, and he lifted up, and all he had in his hand was a handle. He looked at it, oh, good God. And he started to look around him. He says, what are you going to do now? Well, it was a summer's evening, and he was wearing a hat to keep his head cool. And what did he do? But he took off the hat like this, you see, and he says, put it in there. So Tom looked, well, he says, you wanted to put it in there, that's all right. So Tom filled the Guinness up into here, but it didn't hold the whole of the gallon, you see. So he held out the gut and he said, what'll I do with the rest of it? And the young boy said, I says, actually, he says, sure, put it in there. So he put it in here, and here he headed back again then, back to the field, down round the crooked bridge and out. And he walked into the field, and the fellow seen him coming, and he run down. He says, is that all you've with you? God, he says, not at all, Dad. Sure have more in here. That was a true story.
And you know, Cousin Pat, all the best stories are true, aren't they?
Exactly.
Aren't they? Well, come here. I have enjoyed our Ceilí and our chat today, Cousin Pat. And I think it's time I went off to write myself more poems.
Do you do anything else but write this?
Oh, not a hit. Not a hit. Well, until we meet each other again, Cousin Pat, good luck.
Okay, Sonny.